We're attempting a journey starting in Dublin and heading northwest through the Midlands using the Royal Canal, trying to return Rambler to the Shannon and to make some discoveries along the way. We've reached the end of the long level, 32 kilometers with no locks. But now we're faced with 8 of them in quick succession. This is the 18th, and it's said to be the shortest lock on the system. They all vary slightly. I'm worried that Rambler may be too long for it, that our rudder may get trapped between the gates when they close behind us. But all goes well. We're heading for number 19, and by the time we get to 25, we'll be on the summit level. And after that, it's downhill all the way to the Shannon. We have help with the racks and the balance beams, but it's still hard work. The whole thing becomes slightly more complicated when there's a bridge immediately before the lock. It's hard to see what you're doing. So halfway up the long flight of locks, we need a break. This will give me an opportunity to explore the quiet little village of Riverstown. Riverstown has a railway station. It's called Killucan Station because it used to serve the much larger village of Killucan a few kilometers away. But now it's a ghost station. The wind whistles through empty engine sheds. There's nobody in the signal box. This is a little eerie, with an after-the-apocalypse feel. No train has stopped here for 47 years. They just go thundering through.
It was a vibrant business here. They had goods trains delivered and store livestock, sheep and cattle, for the Kinnegad Fair, the Killucan Fair, and then transporting finished cattle to the docks for export. They then had excursions to Croke Park. I went on one of them just after the war. And it would be full of passengers. They'd be standing, and the steam engines, you know, if you looked out the window, you'd get black. The advent of the car, the van, and the lorry, they kept losing business. In a phased basis, this station started to close and completely closed in 1964.
Many rural railway stations were closed around this time, but some of them have been successfully reopened, bringing new life to quiet places.
I would like to see it open, and a lot of the local people would like to see it open. They'll be able to commute to central Dublin within an hour.
We finally get through the 8 locks and reach the summit level. I travel on with a new insight into the importance of transport networks. But here we have to prepare for a new kind of obstacle on the canal. It's what's called an accommodation bridge. It's there to accommodate a farmer who has land on both banks of the canal. It's a lifting bridge that has to be raised to allow boats to pass, and I get the job of raising it, which, because the counterbalancing weights aren't properly adjusted, is a bit of a workout. And then we get stuck again, glued to a mud bank underneath the bridge. But this has happened so many times before that we've developed quite efficient techniques for unsticking our huge craft.
Oh, she's moving.
Free at last, but still sliding over the bed of the canal rather than floating along it. The level is low, and there's about 20 kilometers of it ahead of us. It'll be slow going. The canal and the railway line have a close relationship, but not always a loving one. It was, after all, the competition from the railways that was a major factor in the decline of trade on the Royal Canal. A decline that led to its final closure in 1961, a closure that was to last half a century. The canal and the land on either side of it are not just of human importance. Over the years, it's become a haven for many forms of wildlife. There's a little strip of soft green plants and silky water threading through the farmland and the bog that provides a refuge, a sort of linear nature reserve, vital to many living things that are threatened by human progress.
Canal banks are one of the best areas for butterflies that you can find in the whole country. Butterflies are dependent entirely on plants. You see, a butterfly will lay maybe 100 eggs, and they're specifically laid on the food plant of the butterfly. And interestingly enough, a butterfly has to land on the plant to find out whether it can lay eggs or not, because a butterfly's taste is in its feet. So it actually has to scrape its feet on the leaves of the plant to find out whether it's a suitable plant for the caterpillar. Well, right now you've got the meadow brown and the ringlet, two common butterflies, little brown butterflies. Initially they don't seem very bright and attractive, but when you look at them more closely, they have marvellous patterns. Another butterfly that's just coming out now is the common blue, and that is a magnificent butterfly. Believe it or not, it's found from North Africa right up to the Arctic Circle, and in Ireland it really should be called the uncommon blue, because whilst it's widespread throughout the country, it's not very common. The butterfly population is doing all right in relation to the size and the space that's available to it. The canal banks are hugely important. They need to be maintained as a resource for wildlife.
When the canals were being built, they developed their own vocabulary. What on a railway line is called a cutting was called a sinking on a canal. After the bridge, we'll encounter the second one on our journey so far. Using charges of gunpowder, mules and shovels, the navvies cut their way through a limestone outcrop. So it's only a narrow cutting, barely wider than we are. I don't know what happens if we meet something coming the other way. But this canal is up to its old tricks again. It's bending space and time to create its own dimension. Ireland has disappeared in a quaternion equation. We're in our own world, canal land. Rambler rambles through it, her great bulk shouldering the water aside as we plod down the sinking. Alone and a little lonely. I'm having crazy thoughts, like what would happen if we were never seen again. So, spotting the concrete raft of the bridge that carries the N52 high overhead is a relief. We're not actually in a forgotten dimension. There still is a familiar world out there somewhere. The bridge takes an age to appear, pass overhead, and then disappear. In the meantime, or the dream time, we wander through the canyons of canal land. I've no idea how long we've been down here, but Evan is on lookout duty, trying to spot reality ahead. And finally, the sinking spits us out, and we glide under a bridge and into a very different landscape. Once you leave Dublin behind, Mullingar is the largest town on the canal. So arriving here is a big deal for us, a major event in our journey. And now we're more than halfway to the Shannon. The town has a fine canal harbour, one of the finest in the country. It invites us in and greets us as survivors of the sinking. It's getting late, so we'll spend the night here. This is a significant milestone on our route, which has to be recorded in the logbook before I take to my bunk. We're on the summit level, preparing to drop down towards the Shannon, and I've a hunch that the western end of the canal, because it was restored more recently, will be slightly easier for us. I'm starting to believe that we'll eventually make it, that we will get Rambler to the Shannon. A canal has to have a water supply, and most of the water has to be delivered at the highest point, which is the summit level. The main supply for the Royal comes from Loch Oul and is delivered through a feeder, a miniature canal with a miniature canal bridge. This is wonderful, unexpectedly wonderful. I'm in the middle of a large town, and it's hard to imagine anything less urban. There are fish darting away from my paddle, and I'm also disturbing wood pigeons and blackbirds, though it's hard to imagine a less intrusive vehicle, or one more pleasant to travel in. And now I really do feel like an explorer. The pure, clear water of Loch Oul is not just a supply for the canal. It also feeds the taps of Mullingar and a fish farm beside the feeder.
Well, Cullion Fish Farm is part of Inland Fisheries Ireland, so basically it's where we breed both rainbow trout and brown trout for restocking for anglers all over Ireland. Anywhere in Ireland we restock angling groups, lakes, rivers, for whether it could be 5 fish or 5,000 fish. I said we provide fish for restocking for the anglers to catch.
Brown trout are native to Ireland. They're instantly recognisable because they're brown in colour. Rainbow trout have a red stripe going down the side of the fish, and they're native to Canada.
The rainbow trout are mainly put-and-take fisheries. It's an enclosed system where they can't get out into the natural water courses. The brown trout are into the natural river systems, lakes, where they have been before. We will not stock rainbow trout into where there is a native salmonid fishery, as in brown trout there already. Triploid fish is a new departure here in Ireland. It's been quite common in Europe for a number of years. Triploid fish is a fish that cannot breed, and we've started to develop these fish over the last couple of years as part of the new inland fisheries stocking policy. The fish that are in the Irish waters, the native brown trout, they've developed over centuries in those water systems, and they've developed so that they can cope with the conditions there. We want to make sure that we don't bring in any different genetic material into the fish that are already in those lakes and rivers. So the triploid fish that we provide will never breed with the ones that are there.
Back to my upstream exploration. I've come a couple of kilometers now. Can't be much further. It's like a miniature version of a 19th century expedition to find the source of some great African river, the Nile or the Zambezi. And there it is, a sluice house, where at one time a man lived with his family, regulating the flow of water, letting out more if the barge traffic was heavy through Mullingar. This is a real discovery. And there's even a glimpse of Loch Oul, generous provider of all the water. Poking around, I discover several sets of sluices for controlling the flow. Some obviously no longer in use. We're leaving now, passing urban sprawl and incoherent architecture. I was glad to get here and I enjoyed my stay, but now I'm pleased to be leaving. I've got the nomad urge. I want to keep on traveling. An ugly bridge. Legs like a Mullingar heifer, as they used to say. But we'll soon be out in the country again. I believe that there's a man waiting to meet me round the next bend. He's at the small canal harbour in Ballina, and he wants to show me what the men used to eat on the boats in the old trading days. Louis, what's boxty?
I suppose going back to famine times, the staple diet was potatoes with a bit of fish or bacon thrown in.
So the basis is potatoes?
The basic boxty is just potatoes and salt and a little bit of flour to bind it.
Yep.
And then you can add in anything after that.
The pan's getting nice and hot here.
Yep.
Okay, what do you do next? You get a bowl, which doesn't look quite as antique as the rest of your stuff.
I'm afraid it's all I have at the moment. So that's this. You just put in a couple of tablespoons of flour. And all you need then is a little bit of buttermilk. And we just mix it up into a paste.
Mm-hmm. And that goes in there?
Yeah, we just get the paste then, we put it in. I'm sure in your travels you'll find other people on the barges and that would have baked this sort of stuff. The griddle bread you could cook on a little stove, so I'm sure many a winter's night, slowly going down the Royal Canal, there'd be guys there and they'd have a little bit of potato bread cooking away on a little coal fire or whatever. And, get a nice crispy thing on the outside. And stick that up there for a minute. Do you want to try a bit? Or?
Yeah, please.
This is a real treat now.
Oh, I'm very honoured.
There you go.
Thank you.
It's almost a delicacy. But very, basic food is so good, What do you think?
I think it's great. I think you should put the pan on for the next one.
All right. Are you going to eat another one?
I'm a bit sluggish because I ate too much boxty. But Rambler's doing well, eating up the kilometres of the summit level despite her great size, which dwarfs everything else afloat. We travel contentedly, not saying much. There's another harbour at the end of the level, a place called Coolnahay, a pretty place with a little lockkeeper's cottage. The sort of place where the present gets intimate with the past.
I was born there along with my brother and sister, 3 of us, and my father was the lockkeeper. He was in charge of 3 locks. It was built around the 1800s, 1806. It was there when the canal was opened. I believe I'm 5th generation lockkeepers. The first man that was here was my great-great-grandfather, and his name was Robert Christie. He was here when the canal opened in 1806, and then the next man was another Robert Christie. My grandfather was Michael Christie, and then my father was Michael Christie. So it was 4 generations before me. We travelled along with my father when he was opening the gates. He was in charge of this lock and the next lock, the 27th and the 28th. And he went on his bicycle and the lock key on the front of it, and usually had 1 or 2 of us on the bar of the bike. His job was to open the gates and see them through every lock. My father loved being a lockkeeper. It's a lovely way of life. We loved it.
My father used to keep records because there was a distribution centre there, and there was stables here for the horses. So the people that come here and they change their horses, and he'd have to look after them till they come back. He used to have to give a hand with the unloading, coal, different sundries, all that type of thing. Well, it was a tough job at that time, in the early years. That's in the 20s and 30s.
When he was made redundant, he was a very sad man, and I spent a lot of time with him, and I could see his sadness and sense it.
Big loss of this area. Everyone enjoyed the canal, and people worked on the canal, and all that went away. There was always an average of 7, 8 to 10 people around this area that was involved in the canal, and they'd be either cleaning it or maintaining it or doing something with it. As I told you about these lock gates being built here by one man, cut the carpenter, did the gates. All that work went away then. Of course, it was a big, big loss.
It's all a little sad. But this isn't a sad-looking place. It's been reincarnated and is full of colour and life.
I keep this place the same as it's like an extended front garden for me. It's a dream come true to see the boats coming in and to see them going through. I'd love to be able to do what I did in my father's time, to be able to rack up the land tunnel, as he called that, the land tunnel, and fill the chamber and let the boat through. I'd love to be able to do that.
So lockkeeping is in your blood?
It is.
I think I have a bit of canal water in my blood too. I'm starting to enjoy this more and more. Another flight of locks, the first of the dropping locks. Step by step, Rambler is descending into the Shannon River Basin. We're getting there, and I'm developing mixed feelings about that. I want to arrive, but I don't want to stop travelling. The destination is both a promise and a threat.
We're staying afloat tomorrow when beautiful photography enhances stories of lives as distinctive as the river that influenced them. A wine travels from source to sea at 7:30 on Monday evening. But back to tonight, the life of Agnes Brown navigates some major changes in our movie at 9:35, while next it's the RTE News.